Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Tara. It's very nice to see you all here this week. This week we have an amazing special guest. This is Taylor, aka Running in Scrubs. You can follow her on Instagram. I'll put her handle over here. We're here talking about what it's like to be an IMG at RCSI. Specifically, we're talking a little bit about what it's like to be an IMG in the graduate entry medicine program because we are both graduate medical students, but we've got some differences. So Taylor, do you want to give me some background a little bit about you?
Sure. So I'm in my last year of the graduate program. I'm also from Canada. I'm from the west coast of Canada. I did a degree in microbiology and then I came here 4 years ago and now I'm in my last 4 weeks of school. Match day is in 2 days, not that I'm counting. And yeah, so I thought it'd be great to kind of talk about two different experiences being IMGs.
And then just a quick refresher, I know you guys have a little bit of background on who I am. I'm also Canadian, but I did my undergraduate degree in music therapy, and I am a second-year graduate entry medicine student at RCSI. So we're kind of at two different places, but we're both Canadian, but we're from opposite sides of the country. You're applying to residency right now.
Yeah.
I'm kind of focusing on the USMLE step 1 right now.
Two totally different phases.
Yeah.
You're at the harder stage. I'm at the easier stage.
Does it get better?
Yeah, give it 1 more year.
Okay.
Then it gets better.
Okay.
The final year is the best year.
So we have some kind of quick questions. Some of them we got from you on Instagram. Some of them we have kind of thought of as kind of our most frequently asked questions. First, Taylor, would you want to explain what exactly is an IMG?
This is a question I get all the time.
Same.
So IMG, International Medical Graduate. So it's basically a student that goes to a different country to get their medical education. We are both Canadian. We got our degrees, or will be getting our degrees in Ireland, so that makes us an IMG. The biggest kind of issue surrounding that is when you're trying to come back to your home country to practice medicine, and that's where you're treated a little bit differently just because the medical degree is foreign to your home country.
Yes.
Not that it's any worse of a degree, it's just that it's different than what is normal for them.
So then the next question we usually get is what countries are we planning on practicing in? For me, I'm a Canadian citizen, but a lot of Canadians try to apply to both Canada and the United States because the Canadian application is so much more challenging than the United States application. My situation's a little bit different because of the specialty I want to go into and kind of current personal circumstances. I'm currently considering only applying to the United States for residency, but I know that that's different for you.
Yeah, so I'm only applying to Canada, again, kind of more for personal reasons. My fiance lives in Canada, so it'd be hard to go to the States. I guess the different thing about being a Canadian who studies abroad is that most Canadians will apply to both countries. So that's why a lot of students write the USMLEs and write all the Canadian board exams and then apply to both countries. And that's just to maximize your chances. But you definitely don't have to apply to both countries. You can do exactly what you're doing and only apply to the States. You don't even have to go to Canada or the US. You can stay here in Ireland. You can go to the UK. You can go to Australia. I think that's one of the really cool things about being an IMG is you have so many more options. If I had just studied in Canada, then that would have just been the rest of my life. And now I've had this amazing opportunity and I could have gone down so many different paths. And you know, your journey has changed as well.
Exactly. And the nice thing about being an IMG at a school that's familiar with IMGs is that there's so many supports in place to help you get back to wherever you're going. So for me right now at my stage in training with the USMLE, there's a whole USMLE board in place to help students take the test and make sure that they're successful. Taylor, since you're hopefully going back to Canada, how do you go from being an IMG to being a Canadian medical resident?
Okay, so the main thing is that you apply to residency just in the same way that any other Canadian graduate would apply. And Canadians you often hear the term CMG, those are Canadian medical graduates, so someone that studied within Canada and graduated from a Canadian school. We're an IMG. We're also known as CSAs, which is a Canadian studying abroad. So those are like terms that you might hear. So we're kind of, I guess, a little bit different from a maybe traditional IMG in the sense that we are Canadian citizens and we've kind of always had that plan to go back to Canada. Whereas you say 10, 15 years ago, IMGs were students from other countries who had lived in that country their whole life, gone to school, and wanted to come to Canada for further fellowship training, or they just wanted to move and start a new life in a different country. So that kind of shift has happened. So you apply to residency in the same way, but there are very distinct spot allocations for each school. So you'll see schools that have CMG spots and you'll see schools that have IMG spots. So as an IMG, I can only apply to the IMG spots. And there's significantly fewer compared to all the other spots. So family medicine has the largest number, but some programs say like plastics or orthopedics might only have 2-3 spots for the whole country. So that makes it really competitive. So in terms of kind of preparing for the applications, you do electives. So you're trying to get clinical experience in the Canadian system and get letters of recommendation from Canadian physicians saying this student is really strong in our healthcare system and he or she would make a great doctor in the future. The next thing you need to do is your board exams. We have 2 exams which have actually just changed this year.
Yes.
So one is called the MCCQE1. It's an exam that is somewhat similar to Step 2 CK in the sense that it's all clinical knowledge, but obviously with a Canadian focus on it.
Yep.
And then the second exam you have to do is called the NAC OSCE, which is a national OSCE. Again, only for international students that have to do it. Similar to Step 2 CS, they're assessing your ability to build a rapport with Canadian patients, speak English, testing you in different ethical situations, right? So it's not an easy exam, but you're definitely well prepared for it studying in a place like Ireland.
Yes.
So you do that. There's only one weekend that it's offered, and it's offered in the September of the year you're set to graduate. That's really it in terms of exams. So it's a little bit easier than the States because we have less.
So for students who want to practice in the US, there's a series of exams you have to write first before you apply, and then you have electives that you take and matching and ranking and interviews and all that stuff. But the stage that I'm in right now is writing the USMLE Step 1, which you took a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I remember it well.
That's what I hear from everybody, is that it's a fantastic and terrible experience. So the USMLE Step 1 focuses on kind of your preclinical knowledge, all of your basic biochemistry, physiology, pathology, embryology, anatomy, and puts those into clinical scenarios, and then the questions are broken down into a multi-step answer format. So you have to answer multiple questions in order to get to the final answer. The way that I like to phrase it to people who aren't in medicine is that it's like if someone asked you, well, your neighbor's name is John and his wife's name is Denise and they have 3 small children, what's the name of their dog? So that's kind of how the questions are structured, and you'd have to figure out, well, John is married to Denise and they have 3 kids. Okay, well, the most common names for their kids would be this, and then they're born in the years this, so that would make the most likely name they would pick for their dog Sam. So then after you write Step 1, a lot of electives I've heard require your Step 1 score in order to do electives in the United States.
Yeah, I have heard that as well. It's definitely not everywhere and it's specialty dependent.
Writing Step 1 is extremely important. And then after Step 1, you have Step 2 CK, which is the clinical knowledge portion of it. It's similar to the MCCQE in Canada. Yeah. And then after that, you have Step 2 CS, which is the OSCE portion that's more similar to the NAC OSCE.
Yeah.
So for me, right now, my main focus is on Step 1 and doing well on that exam. After students write all of these exams, they go and they do electives, and they then have to apply to programs and interview, and then there's this whole process of matching, which you're in right now.
Yeah, and it's very long, drawn out, and very expensive process.
Yes.
So basically what you do is you apply either to Canada, the US, or both. It's usually in the fall of your final year of medicine if you want to go straight into a residency program. Yes. And you apply to whatever schools you want. You can really apply anywhere. And then you submit, obviously, all your board exam scores, your letter of recommendation, you have to write personal statements, and then in sort of the fall through to January, February, you get invited for interviews. It's an interesting process because not only are you're sort of trying to sell yourself, but the school's also equally trying to sell them. So I was in a really rural community for my interview, and they hired the mayor to take us around in a bus and show off the community, and they were very proud about their recreation center they had just built. So it's kind of an interesting process because they are just as much trying to sell their school and their program and their community to you, which is different. Yes. And then once you finish that, you do this thing called ranking. You basically submit a list of these are the 10 places that I interviewed at, or whatever number that is, and you put in order of 1 through 10 where you want to go. And the school does the same thing in the applicants that they interviewed. They rank them 1 through whatever. And then the system goes through your list as an applicant first. So it ensures you go somewhere you genuinely want to go. Yes. And they match that up. And then on Tuesday, I get an email and it says where I go. So you only get 1 option or none. It's not kind of like when you're applying to medical school where you might get multiple offers. You just get 1 offer, legally binding contract, you have to go. And the same happens in the States, but that's about 2 weeks from now, 2-3 weeks from now.
And then for students that apply in Canada and the US, the Canadian application takes preference. Yes. So that's just something that's important for students to be aware of. So for example, if I were to apply in Canada and the US and my boyfriend is American and he lives in the United States and I were to get a Canadian residency, I would have to take the Canadian option.
That's a really good point. So you automatically get withdrawn from the American match if you match to Canada.
So this next question is, so for Taylor, what did you wish that you knew when you were a Gem 2? And then I'll answer what I wish that I knew as a like incoming student.
Okay. Is I wish I had known that there wasn't one right way to traverse this journey of being an IMG. I feel like you get a lot of advice from other students who say, this is what you need to do, this is when you need to write this exam, this is the score that you need. And everybody gets through at the end with a completely different journey, with a completely different outcome, and it's the one that works best for them. I kind of wish that I had known that I just needed to do what was gonna be best for me and kind of trust myself in the process and schedule the exams based on what was gonna work for my stress level or based on what other extracurriculars I was doing or what was going on in my personal life, as opposed to following some rubric that someone had told me that worked for them.
That's really great advice. And then for people that are watching this that are maybe applying to be IMGs right now or maybe like thinking about doing an IMG in the future, I think the piece of advice that I wish that I'd known coming in was that everyone is coming in with different backgrounds, and it feels like, especially for me coming in as a non-science student, it felt like everyone else was leaps and miles ahead of where I was. But this is still everyone's first time, for the most part, in medical school. This is an entirely new experience for everybody. Everybody is kind of going through the same growing pains and hurdles. It's okay that you're not exactly where everyone else is all the time. So a couple weeks ago on my Instagram, I did one of those little question bubbles asking people what questions they would have for IMGs. And here are a couple of questions. Have there been any times you've wanted to give up on it?
All the time. But I don't think that that's unique to being an IMG. I just feel like that's just medical school in general. Last year, so your third year, known as SC1 here at RCSI, is horrendous. The year itself is really challenging. It's your first clerkship year. You've got a lot of different rotations you're rotating through. And then you have all these exams on top of it, being an IMG, and that was insanely hard. Never to a point where I very seriously thought about giving up on it. I've definitely had those moments or those days where things aren't going right, but I wholeheartedly, genuinely have loved my experience here, and we were kind of talking about this before, like I would do that all over again if I had the opportunity to. So yes and no.
I've had a pretty similar experience. Most days, I love it. And I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. But then there are the really tough days. One of those days that I can really think about in my brain where I was like, wow, am I really...
It sticks out to you.
Am I really meant to be here?
Because no matter where in the world you study, medical school is hard. It is really hard.
How do you make your CV look great? And what can you mention in it? Example, extracurricular activities in uni life. So when I originally put my CV together, I had a lot of clinical experience because I was coming from the background of being a clinical music therapist. I worked for a few years. I had a lot of experience in this kind of realm. So I then tried to use my CV to focus a lot on that clinical experience. And then in my personal statement, always tried to relay back to those experiences to show how they would be beneficial in a medical program.
And that's exactly what you have to do. So that's key. I guess so my biggest thing has always been to not be a CV kind of booster. So I don't do things purely to think, well, this will look really good on my CV, or to do this research because this will look really good. Do things you genuinely enjoy. You know, don't volunteer at the hospital when you hate what that volunteer job is going to be, because that's going to be miserable to go there every single week doing something that you hate. Sometimes you can get really caught up in this, oh, I need to do this because it's going to make me look good, or I need to do this because this is what everybody else is doing. Do what you like, because at the end of the day, if you know you go down a different path, you need to be be able to look back on your life and be really happy with the things that you did and feel very fulfilled. And that's going to come from pursuing things that you're interested in.
So the last question is, what's the difference between RCSI as a grad student versus an undergrad student?
Obvious, it's 4 years. Versus 5 or 6 years. So from my understanding, if you're coming from Ireland as an Irish high school student, you go to a 5-year program. If you're coming from North America as an IMG, most go into a 6-year program. And so that first year is basically like an accelerated undergrad. Basic sciences, chemistry, biology, and it's just 1 year. And then your med school is 5 years. If you've maybe done 1 year of university in Canada, you've had some science background already, maybe I think sometimes if you do IB or AP courses, then you can jump right into in a 5-year program. So yeah, it's 4 years. You have to have a degree.
Yes.
That would be a big thing. You also have to have written the MCAT.
Or you have to, if you're a European student, the equivalent of the MCAT for them is the GAMSAT. Not every school has one. I think there's 4 in Ireland, if I remember correctly.
I think there's 4, yeah.
UCD, RCSI, Cork, and NUIG.
Yeah, and really the only difference in terms of once you're actually in is your first 2 years. So the 4-year program is essentially exactly the same as a North American medical school. So you do 2 years of pre-clerkship, very lecture focused, learning the anatomy, physiology, and then your last 2 years, your clerkship years. If you're in a 5 or 6 year program, that pre-clerkship year is spread over 2 or 3 or 4 years, and then you join. So the grad meds and the undergraduates, we all join for our last 2 years, and our last 2 years are identical.
So GEM and 5-year are completely split for the first 2 years. Yeah. So I think that's it for us this week. What you guys should do is go and follow Taylor on Instagram. She's at Running in Scrubs. What I really love about your Instagram is that you show the real aspects of what it's like to be an IMG. And I think that there's this pressure to fall into, well, I've done everything right and I've done everything perfectly, and I think you show all of the human aspect of that.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you guys for stopping by. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to get notifications when I post new videos. I'll see you guys on Sunday. See you next time. Bye-bye.